Hi, welcome back to Game Geeks. I'm your host, Kurt Wiegel. We're still at No Brand Con in 2008, so let's go ahead. Someone brought up 4th edition a few minutes ago. This is as good a time to go ahead and air that out as we can. What are our thoughts on 4th edition? How many of you think, this is a quick straw poll, how many of you think it's just a attempt by Wizards of the Coast to make more money?
As in only an attempt?
I'm sorry, what?
As in that's its only goal?
As that is its only goal, is to milk more money. I see 2 hands over here. And I'm not voting, I'm the neutral party here. Okay, how many of you think it's actually needed because 3.5 needed a massive overhaul? How many of you fall somewhere in between the two?
Yeah.
Okay, well yeah, let's start with the they need more money philosophy on this side. And we'll pass the mic around. And what are your thoughts over there?
I think they came out with all of the books and all of the ideas that they could.
Okay.
And once they're out, all the gamers have the books that they need. So if they release a whole new edition, that's a whole new revenue source for them without them having to try to create a whole new original game.
Do you play 3.5 much?
Yep, and I just got all the books that I needed.
Always works that way. What do you think of 3.5?
It took me a while, but I got used to it, and I'm enjoying it a lot. There's some stuff I don't quite understand, but I tend to have a lot of people around me that do.
Okay.
To help me out.
That's good. Do you run or play?
I play.
Okay. Do you have anything you want to add? Since he's handing you the mic.
Well, I started the Wizards of the Coast game when the Star Wars role-playing game got revamped from 2nd edition, and I'm surprised how big Wizards of the Coast grew out of past 10 years. So I'm thinking that it's a way for at least that company to expand the revenue and plus give you more insight into how gaming systems are played even to those who never played a role-playing game before.
I was really around during when they switched to 3rd edition, 2nd to 3rd, and that was a huge move mechanically. Getting rid of a lot of going to a D20 system was a huge mechanic move, and I don't think, and nowadays that's the gold standard. Nowadays, almost every game, the vast majority of popular games use a D20 system.
Wow, that's going to get some hate emails.
Yeah.
I'll post your email address so they can speak directly to you on that one.
But a lot of the big ones, and so it was a huge mechanical shift, and I don't think you can really do, now that we've had a huge mechanical shift from 2nd to 3rd, I don't think you can necessarily follow it up with something else that big. Because it made gaming a lot simpler when you only had one set of dice, and you only had, it became, we had Star Wars was based on 3rd edition, and all sorts of other games used the D20 system. Well,
that's a good point. We could make a real quick list. Just on the D20, you had Star Wars, Babylon 5, Farscape. You had Spycraft, which gave birth to Stargate, which was based on Spycraft, but that was still a D20. Call of Cthulhu made an adaptation in D20. So did Fading Suns. I'm sorry? Bessem. B-E-S-M. Oh, B-S-M. I don't say it, I just spell it out. Big Eye, Small Mouth made a D20 adaptation. So yeah, there were a lot of properties that switched over. The thing to remember is that D20, there was a huge boom for a long time, and then it imploded. It really collapsed. A lot of companies that bought into the D20 rush, then, once people went like, it's D20, I got it, and I can figure it out. They sort of announced 4th edition, they're going to do something similar, where you can start using the 4th edition rules. It's not the open game license anymore. They have a different name for it.
Similar name.
But
as far as I know, what happened is when the open gaming license came out, people started making stuff like, hey, D&D's getting pretty big. I can make a quick buck off of this if I make some whatever book on who knows what, and because the quality wasn't necessarily regulated or very good at times for some of these third-party products, when you go to a book, then when a customer went to a bookstore, said, oh, here's the books I know that I have, and here's this huge multitude of books, let's pick one, try it, then it turns out to be bad, then they're basically going to say, well, all those books are probably crap, I'm just going to stick with what I know. So it just, the entire rush killed the market. I think it's very similar to what happened to card games. Like right after Magic came out, everyone's like, these card games are amazing. Let's just go make tons of money and make whatever card game.
Word on the street, that's almost what destroyed Chaosium, was their Mythos card game. that just no one really got into the first time. So.
I mean, like the whole late night CCG hour here is all about that. I mean, we played a game last night of SimCity card game.
SimCity card game?
Yeah. And most of those crashed and burned for the same reason that most of those books did. And I think for 4th edition, I think it's sort of past that, so I don't think you're going to have quite nearly as much issue.
I'll tell you what, let's bring this back around for a second. 4th edition, how many of you have seen the preview books? They put out 2 preview books. It was like they detailed the races, and then there's another where they detailed sort of the worlds and the monsters. What are our thoughts? Will 4th edition be... I've seen stuff that makes me think this is going to be really good, and I've seen stuff that makes me think that this is really going to not be what I'm looking for in a game. And you brought it up a few minutes ago. You're right. It all ties back into, it does feel like an MMO. It does feel like sort of how some of those things work.
Yeah, one of the biggest things I think it does is it makes a lot of things that were implicit in earlier editions of D&D, and many role-playing games in general, explicit.
I.e.?
That, like, in the older editions you had your class. You had fighter, you had wizard, you had rogue, whatever. And MMOs took this to some degree, and people figured out that, hey, each of these different classes sort of does its own thing. You have, like, the defender, you've got the tank, you've got the DPS, damage per second, you've got the healer and stuff. D&D said, hey, that's a good idea. Let's make these roles that people generally play explicit in our games. So instead of saying it's just a fighter, they hit things, we're saying that it's a martial defender, that they defend the party, they can control the battlefield by defending others with their martial prowess, where like the rogue is the martial striker. They do lots of damage really quick. This has been the same case for all the editions for the most part. But now they're telling you exactly how it's done. And if you want to play this type of character, this is the class you probably want to play.
Okay. Will it allow you to mix and match that? Let's say you want to play a wizard for some reason, like you're a masochist, but you want to play a wizard who is the frontline fighter type, the frontline blaster. Is that a possibility?
Yeah, well, there's a different power sources. So if you really want to play, like I was saying, like martial and martial, that's because you hit things. Then you have arcane and divine. So like a regular wizard would be a divine or an arcane controller, because they control the battlefield. I'm assuming at some point there's going to be an arcane defender or an arcane striker that's similar.
Okay.
And they're still multi-classing to some degree. I don't really know how it works.
All right. Well, let me ask you another question. Quick straw poll, raise of hands. How many of you are going to get 4th edition when it comes out?
I don't know how soon.
Well, within a year of its release. How many of you are thinking, oh God, no? Nobody. All right. How many of you are going to kind of wait to see what the reviews have to say? And you know, I predict what's going to happen is the same thing would happen when it went from 1st to 2nd and 2nd to 3rd, is we're going to have a small population that's going to be, oh my God, this is the best game ever, we must get all of it. Another population that's going to decry it as the second coming of Lucifer, then it will destroy gaming, and then we'll have the middle ground, sort of the quiet majority, who's going to try it, see if it works, and do stuff on their own. Any final thoughts on 4th edition? Go.
I think like D&D, like I just started playing Exalted with Brian, and I noticed what D&D really is it's like a role-playing miniatures game. Like the tactical basis of combat is really where it centers on. And like Brian was talking about with the roles, they're trying to make it very explicit that you're playing this kind of tactical combat game where your position is important, your role is important, your power source is important. And I just think that that's a specific kind of game for some people.
Okay.
Whereas like Exalted is like more of like the role-playing aspect. I don't know, that's just been my experience with D&D. I've been playing it for a long time, and it's mostly for me been like a combat simulator.
It lends itself to min-maxing.
Yeah, it lends itself to min-maxing, combat simulating, and that kind of stuff.
All right, well, you know, this is as good a point to take a little break as we can. So, a little discussion on 4th edition here at No Brand Con 07 in 2008. For Game Geeks, I'm your host, Kurt Wiegel. Good day and good gaming.